Welcome to the Career Therapy Podcast. My name is Martin McGovern, and today we have something a little different for you. I know it's been a hot second, but since we've had a Career Therapy Podcast, we've been really focused on the live streams and creating Chance the Career Chameleon comics. And one of the things that's coming up, or a couple of things coming down the pipeline here in the podcast, is that we're bringing in some new formats, some new topics and things. Today's topic is VP Chats, Vice President Chats. And our guest today is Carlos Rebellon, who is a Vice President and Program Manager at Northern Trust Corporation, working in product change management. I also used to work with Carlos in my first job out of college, and I'm very excited for this conversation, or very excited to share this conversation with you. Carlos touches on all sorts of amazing things when it comes to the job search. Number one, he talks about what it's like on the hiring side. Number two, he talks about building relationships and how to authentically network and not do it in this awkward way that a lot of job seekers do it. And number three, he just kind of has this great outlook on skill building and setting expectations and communicating your goals to management so that they know what you're trying to accomplish and you can easily move up the ranks in your company, in your career, and do it with style, the way Carlos does. And so without further ado, we're going to get into this conversation. Thank you so much for stopping by the podcast, and I'll see you. All right. So I'd love to kick it off by asking you the most infamous job search question that everyone is always asked, which is, tell us about yourself.
Well, I guess if I can go to the Wayback Machine, way back, I went to school to become a school psychologist. So I was, adept in taking psychology classes, taking all the social sciences, graduated with a psychology degree and a minor in Spanish. Started to get married, and then had this life-changing moment where I was in a construction accident, and I realized I needed to start working. So first step into the career world is, because of my Spanish background, I got a job at Baxter Healthcare. Baxter Healthcare was looking for bilingual operations analysts. So I was in the supply chain, and that is where I got my first glimpse of what's behind the corporate machine. Everything you can learn, how you can become much more adept in, things that you're passionate about. Training is free. I'm like, oh my God, I can take any class I want. So, my first step into the computer world and technology was learning Excel. I learned Excel from top bottom. I learned web design, and I said to myself, I want to become a web designer. So my second job at Baxter was as a web designer in the Financial Center of Excellence. Did that for about 2 years, realizing that perhaps web design was not my true passion.
What was it about web design that you realized?
I like web design because it brought out the creative use of computers. You can manipulate any image, you can manipulate any screen with HTML, with code, and create a beautiful site. I started on my own business, actually, after doing that for about 7 years. But I realized that you can only go as far as your creative palette. So if you're not really a designer, if you're not really an artist, it makes it difficult to be creative and to think of things that your clients don't ask for. So if your client asks for, I want this page with this, you can do it easily. But if they're asking you, can you create me something beautiful? I find myself, faltering. So it seemed as though you needed to have more of that artistic background, the designing, digital design element, which I did not have. So I actually worked with a project manager, and I thought to myself, what's this project management? What is that all about? Started to learn about it, and lo and behold, I made myself a promise that I would become a project manager. So was in, customer service, did some data analysis, worked at Baxter about 11 years in total. But by my 8th year, that's when I became a project manager in the quality data side. So did a lot of international travel by doing work in Colombia, Argentina, China, Japan. There was all these jobs related to our computer, our customer experience center and our complaint management system. So I was the project manager for releasing the newest version of that.
Nice.
After a few years of project management, you start to think, what is it that I should progress to as a project manager? And PMP, the certification from PMI, was one element that I endeavored for. And how could I apply myself to the Project Management Institute of Chicagoland? Volunteered to become a director of certification, learned about how to certify as a PMP. And after about 3 years of doing that director volunteerism, an opportunity came up to be a project manager at Discover. And Discover is where you and I met. We worked there several years, had a great time in the customer experience e-business, learning all about how to design a site from what we call clickable compositions and creating a website that is user-friendly, easy.
Were you working
on
the mobile stuff as well while we were there?
Both. So
Yeah,
we did create mobile, iPad, and desktop versions of all of our compositions.
And we had to create separate things for each platform at the time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. We did not have, when we first started down that path, we did not have dynamic HTML. We did not have dynamic pages. They hadn't converted them yet. So you did have to design for each of them individually.
Yeah.
And eventually,
I remember being in creative services and someone showed me a responsive website for the first time. And I was like, oh my God.
It changes everything. Yes.
Hey,
and
Glennis.
So, yes, there she is.
Glennis.
Hey, how's it going, Glennis? So after Discover, the role that I was hoping to move on to as a senior project manager, second level, I thought, okay, program manager, that's my next job. And an opportunity came up at Walgreens, which was down the street from Discover. They're all very close to each other, Baxter, Discover, Walgreens, all in that little intersection in Deerfield. Went to Walgreens as a program manager, worked there for about 3 years, loved it, but I realized that I did miss the whole project management element, the getting your hands dirty. I was very strategic. I was very high level as a program manager. I was very dependent on running the schedule, the resources, the finances, doing your forecast, budgeting, etc., which to me was all great experience, but I was looking for more of the getting my hands dirty, planning, project managing. So if I were to think my career were to go from a program manager, would be the next phase of my career. And it wasn't so much the job, but the organization, the environment. I started to look around where project management, technology, and design hasn't progressed as quickly as other places, like pharmaceuticals, hospital medical supply, online services, etc. Finance, banks in particular. So my first move was to Bank of America and work there as a relationship manager to learn basically everything there is about finances. It wasn't the project manager or program manager job that I was looking for, but to me, that was the first step into the financial arena, where I was truly embedded within a retail financial organization, partnering with a corporate business, corporate banking institution. And then I ended up getting recruited by where I'm currently working, is an investment wealth management bank here in Chicago. That role really was the magic, as far as, wow, the marriage of both worlds, where I got the financials and my skills as a project manager. I came into the ground as a senior project manager with a wealth of knowledge from Baxter, Discover, Walgreens, where I've been doing all this stuff. And I was able to take what worked and what didn't work and apply that to the current role that I'm in. And I find that it was very welcome. The environment that I'm working in is very appreciative of that experience, and so I've had I guess a lot of good success here so far.
That's
So
amazing.
that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah. And what's your current title again?
Vice President, Program Manager.
Wonderful. Yeah, and there's a number of things that I kind of heard as you were going through that story that really stand out to me. One was you were trying at all times to sort of connect the dots forward and backwards. And even if you were in a role that wasn't exactly the role you wanted to be in, you were trying to figure out what you could learn in that role that would apply to the next move. Always sort of keeping that strategic eye, and things never always turn out exactly how we expect, and we roll with the punches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, when you got involved with PMI, I think that that's a really interesting footnote, because you spent a lot of time, involved in that organization, as you said, volunteering with that organization and being,
Yes.
like building that sort of foundation. I think a lot of times when I talk on these live streams about networking, about putting yourself out there, about joining communities, about what we call watering holes, going to where people are in order to build those professional relationships. I think that's probably a really good example of it. I'm kind of curious if you might go into a little more detail
Mm-hmm.
about the non-work, quote unquote, things that you did throughout your career that have contributed to your professional development.
Yeah, I could name plenty. As a employee, junior achievement has always been something that's been offered at the corporate level for volunteerism. We've had Kaboom as the ability to go to build a playground for schools and park districts. So I've always had that embedded within me anyway as a person. But then when it became available in a career, I jumped at those opportunities. And even between jobs, and which is I think what we're talking about is for PMI, it was an opportunity to really involve myself with the larger project management community and to surround myself with other experts in my field. It was a like mindset where we were looking to either achieve the next role or to slam dunk your next project. How do I get this done? And I have 30 people sitting next to me at this dinner table that could answer that question, because they've had 9, 20, 2 years. It's so random when you meet people, where they come from, what they've done. But the fascinating part of it is you're in this area that everyone has got the same mindset. So it's an equal mindset, equal like goals to move forward. With PMI, I was there while I was employed and in between jobs. So while I was unemployed, and I did take advantage of a lot of the resources that were available. While I was employed, I was mostly looking for volunteer opportunities to help with the certification. So that's when I became the director of certification. And then while I was between jobs, there were networking opportunities for folks who were looking for employment. You could put your name in the hat saying, I'm currently in between jobs. I'm looking for the next role. These are my interests. Kind of like a job board, but internally. And as a connection, my my director of certification prior to me, a gentleman by the name of John Duggan, he worked downtown, and during a transition between jobs, I was able to connect to 10 different people and say, hey, as I write my letter, I currently have left my previous role. I'm looking for such and such an opportunity. Let's connect for some lunch. No strings attached. How would you like to do that? And of the 10 that I wrote, 8 responded, and I met with 4 of them one-to-one to talk about opportunities. And with this gentleman that I mentioned, it was because he and I connected personally outside of just PMI. We had the same passion for project management, passion for soccer. It's kind of like a personal and professional friend, and we were able to kind of check in with each other even after I moved on to the next role. and kept in contact. There are still a few people within PMI that I run into, again, here and there. You don't realize how vast that network is across Chicagoland. And what is nice is what used to happen, and I'm not sure if this still occurs, is they have these monthly dinners. And essentially you go to Schiller Park, have a dinner. You go downtown, have a dinner. And that's when they have the monthly PMI Chicagoland meetings, the updates for all the members, etc. So I do currently keep up my membership, and I have used the opportunity to go to their global PMI last year with my boss as an opportunity for development. So I continue to use and to benefit from that relationship with PMI.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a cool organization, and it's actually one that my father is very involved with. And I remember when I was between jobs, he was very gung-ho about me joining, and I think I was a member for a year or so. And I've been to a few of their events, so there's a lot of good stuff going on in there. And again, it's that opportunity to connect with an already established network, to tap into projects that are already in the works, to volunteer for things. I always say, it's great to go to an event. It's better to volunteer at the event, and it's best to put on your own. And so anytime you can get more involved with an organization that's already established, and what you kind of said, nerding out about these things with other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And connecting beyond just the surface level of the topics. I think what's really interesting about careers, and something that comes up a lot when it comes to networking, is this sort of like, people feel inauthentic. People feel kind of, they almost feel like networking is gross in a way, or at least that's the vibe that I get from a lot of people when I encourage them to network. And I think it's kind of funny because you and I believe we worked on a project or two together, but mostly we just sat near each other.
Yep.
And you had like a putter at your desk, and we would like, at the end of the day, hit some golf balls around, and you had a ton of like hot sauces.
Yes,
we had your desk. You had
Hot
the whole
Sauce Aficionado class,
right? Oh my God, tell us about that, because I'm trying to remember all the details. And it's like, those are the things that stand out. That, like, I mean, obviously, I remember like when you would give me a project plan, it was the most detailed thing I'd ever seen, and it was impressive as hell. But then we would also make like chili cook-offs and stuff like that. Share a little bit about your approach, or your maybe philosophy on like building connections professionally.
So I think just to give you fill in the details for that. So I know that I've always had this affinity for hot sauces, and Greg Cameron, who was one of our esteemed coworkers, he challenged me to eating, the hottest pepper you can, and he said I can eat a hot pepper too. I love hot sauce. I'm like, oh really? Challenge, So I brought the ghost pepper salsa, and he literally took the chip, dipped it, and ate the whole thing, and just looked at me like, okay, you ready? And it was like, oh, this guy is a contender. So we all brought our hot sauces, and so we started the Hot Sauce Aficionado Club. And out of one of those meetings, somebody said, hey, you know what? We need to make a salsa challenge. And I'm like, okay, I'll organize it. I was the CPO, chief party officer at the time.
Oh my gosh, you were the CPO. Oh, I remember that. That's so fantastic.
And so they were like, yep, make the salsa challenge. I'm like, okay. So put it out there as far as an event, sent it out as an email, all through work. I mean, mind you. Gave them, these are the choices of hot, mild, or medium. And then someone asked, hey, can we do guacamole? I'm like, sure, guacamole is included. And we picked a date, and everyone brought in their hot sauces, and we had a good participation. We had 8 entries. 5 of them were salsa, and 3 were guacamole. Some of them may have been store-bought. We weren't sure. They just, opened the can and poured it in the bowl, in the back room. But there were a lot of really good homemade ones. And so the winner was so good. It was this really like sweet and spicy, like
Remember it. But
mango
it's so weird.
salsa.
I can remember it.
Yeah, and then our VP at the time, he absolutely loved it, and he's like, "We got to do this again," and took us out, for Mexican food, just to say thank you for all the participation. What I find really was the the overall benefit of an event like this at work was the connections. The fact that we all were so vamped up, so excited to attend. Everyone kind of stepped away from their desk for about a half hour, and it was just, being together, enjoying the food. That was one event. The other one, which I think you had mentioned, was our event downtown, the JP Morgan Chase Challenge,
Mhm.
putting together a tent. So I put my project manager hat on for that one, and we did the testing for the different barbecue vendors. We actually had a guy come in, bringing in
That was
hot
maybe the best day
barbecue
at work.
sandwiches,
That was the best day at work I've ever had. When you brought
coleslaw.
in. What company was like? What was the barbecue?
That was Sweet Baby Ray's. They came in and did us a sampling. So it was yes, and so we picked one of the vendors, and they came, set up our tent. We had the heaters outside because it was cold, and it was a great evening. One of those events where it went off without a hitch. I had a few people that I needed for backup, for photography, for just gathering people, where to check in, where to get your badge, where to get your shirt. Events like that at Discover were awesome.
Yeah.
One that I can share really quickly that I did here at my current employer is the Chicago bike. I think it's like the ATA does a yearly bike challenge, a commuting to work challenge through the month of July.
Bike drive?
It's not Bike the Drive. It's during July 6th through the 19th. Basically, you ride your bike to work, and every hour, every mile that you ride, you can log it. And the challenge is just to be active and to ride the bike more. From that, we changed it to our whole department activity. So didn't matter if you were biking, walking, doing yoga, kayaking, running, whatever it is, log those minutes. And we did North America versus EMEA. So we have our partners in London and Limerick. And oh my God, it was like the gauntlet was thrown down. It was like the National Olympics were going on. I biked 292 miles in those 2 weeks. Some folks did like 1,600 minutes of like running, basketball, golfing, walking, and it's like it really went nuts. Just to say, EMEA, they beat us on minutes because they were very much doing running, basketball, walking the dog type stuff. But we won with regards to miles, so distance traveled. So we had a lot of biking, etc. But that part was everyone came back to me and my boss and said, you know what, I had really appreciated being active, but just the camaraderie of going through a challenge together and just being more active. Everyone was sharing photos. We had a slideshow that we put out there where people can upload photos, and we actually had it part of our town hall meeting. They threw a slide up there where it showed pictures of us biking, riding, kayaking. It was really a great event. We're going to do it again next year, but the benefits, not only health-wise, but activity-wise.
That's
and
amazing, man.
Getting together and doing stuff together.
It really is. And I think, if I look back, I mean, you and I, again, we didn't work on that many actual projects at work together, but we did all these like little side projects together that were like non-work projects. And I think for the marathon or the Chase
Challenge, you were the designer for the shirt.
Yeah, I created the shirts both years. I think I still wear one of those.
I still wear it too.
Yeah, the Nike one, the orange Nike one is so comfy. But yeah, so those are the kinds of things that I think, both while you're in a role, sometimes we're tempted to just kind of go to work, do our job, and go home. And I think that it's sort of, considering how much time we spend at work every single day and throughout our lives, we really do want to find ways to foster those other types of connections. And I think, like you said, this leads to things outside of work, between jobs as well. A lot of people worry about gaps in their resume and stuff like that. But if you've got PMI going on and you're maybe volunteering at events or helping them on the director board, you've got things for those gaps. And I'm kind of curious, because now that you've, continued to, progress in your career and move up the rankings, I'm assuming you've been on the hiring side as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how has that looked for you? Having kind of come from where you've come from, I know so you said you started in construction, was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you started construction and you've just, continued to move up the ladder, and now you're on the other side of it, bringing in younger folks probably to the company. What sort of things are you looking for? What do you sort of see while you're on the hiring side of things?
Good question. Thank you. So essentially, when I'm looking for a particular role, let's say project management, I am sure that there is this, thought that out there that when a resume goes out there, it goes into this black hole, that nobody sees it. There are situations like that, like giant job boards, but for a company, what I know from my personal experience is that when I put in a requisition, this is the role I need, these are the qualifications I'm looking for, this is the minimum, experience or educational requirements, and then I set that in, and the resumes start literally as a fire hose. And so as I'm going through the list of resumes, there's about 10 to 20 that I go through that are already screened but sent over to me. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for the particular responsibilities and accomplishments and milestones that a project manager would have completed. So if I'm looking for a program manager, I'm looking for these specific activities. So like if I were to name them program manager, I'm looking for budgeting, scheduling, forecasting, resource allocation, roadmaps.
You look for this in the bullets or in the skills section, or how do you look for it?
Well, there's several places you could find it. Sometimes it's not so much in the mission or the objective, but in the actual job responsibilities. So I performed a forecast for a 3-year project at $6 million. The forecasting is a big part of a program manager's job. So I do look for specific keywords. I do keyword searches, and I also do this thing where it's called a word cloud. So I take all the text from the resume and I throw it into a wizard to create a word cloud. And then the biggest words that are on there, if it doesn't say program manager forecasting, let's say if it doesn't say budgeting, if it doesn't say resources, I'm not as apt to follow through and read through the entire resume. So I'll look at the word cloud and see what are the biggest things that they talk about, and then I'll obviously read it to get content. And if I do choose to do a phone interview, I have the facilities to schedule it, and it's a 15-minute chat where I get to hear a little bit about what this individual that I'm interested is had as far as life experience, as far as what they worked on, what are they looking for, what do they know about the company that we're hiring for. And so that 15-minute is your foot in the door. And if the conversation is A, applicable, B, personable, and C, lively, I mean, you'd be surprised. There are some really dead fish that I get on the phone. They're like, yeah.
I want to hear those stories. So like, what have been some of what's an example of a really great interview that you've had and one that was a little bit rough?
So I would say a great interview is they know all about the company. They have their 3 questions and they are continuously progressing the conversation. That is an easy interview. It's like they're adding and asking at the same time, like in the same sentence. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like they answer my question, but they also give me something that I want to know more about.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a flowing engagement. An interview that wouldn't go well is if I ask a question and they answer it, and that's it. It's got to be nerves. It may be a language barrier. It may be stage fright, whatever it may be. The conversation is for that 15-minute screening is critical. And so that makes me know that they can step into a room and present. They can jump on a call and run the meeting with an agenda. That to me is their on-the-spot job interview. The way they talk, the way they ask, and the way they present themselves.
Yeah.
For the good ones, then
I can give a quick example of
Mhm.
what those look like. So I'll put my little brother on blast here a little bit. When he was doing online dating, he was like, "How come these aren't converting?" He didn't say converting, but it's like, "How come I'm not getting any dates?" And I looked at his messages, and it was like, "What's your favorite food? Pizza. What's your favorite color? Blue. What's your favorite thing?" And just like, the conversation just dies after each question because he never builds on it.
Yeah.
And so what you're kind of talking about here is building rapport and this ability to answer the question and then throw it back, like badminton it back almost. And like a good example of this is like, tell me about a strength and weakness. You kind of talk about one of your strengths and then say, how have you seen, those strengths on your team play out, or how have you seen your team handle that kind of a weakness? Is that sort of, what you're talking about, of bantering it back in that way?
You know what? Another thing that on top of that I do like is when they take the requirements of the job that's in the job description and provide an example of how
Yes.
they've done that. To me, that is the one-to-one connection that makes it so easy to say, yep, they've done it, they know what it is, and they can have relevant experience or know how to handle this type of situation. So at any time, I have a candidate who has A, researched what the company does, and B, looked at the resume and seen these are the requirements, and then created a mini chart for themselves saying, requirement A, I did this for 5 years and I was successful here. Requirement B, I performed this type of meeting on a weekly basis and did C. You know what I mean? So that connection, that drawing out of the requirements and applying it in the interview is really critical, and it really helps to sell the individual.
Yeah, that this idea of storytelling, I think, is huge. I think, a good example of that is someone will say, in an interview, there's that question, tell me about a time you've had a conflict with a coworker, right? And then the person gets nervous, right? Because they don't actually want to talk about a real conflict, because that brings up a lot of negative emotions. And I've also seen the tone of an interview just change completely if someone hasn't dealt with the emotions of that conflict and suddenly they're back with a bad manager in their head. But a good way to deal with that, sometimes people will answer it too generally. They'll be like, well, this one time I had a coworker and we had a conflict, but we fixed it and it's all good.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what was that? That I've got nothing to go on here. Versus like, this person and I had this very specific one-time conflict. I think that's another thing. People will be like, oh, we just were always in conflict. It's like, wait, which time are we talking about, right? So it's like, this person and I had a very specific disagreement during this very specific project while trying to accomplish this goal. And here's how we got through it, good, bad, or otherwise. And then the key thing there, again, to banter it back. And here's what I've learned about conflict from that situation, which I will apply in the future. And then if you really want to double it down, how do you see conflicts get resolved best on your team with your best employees? And now you're in a conversation about resolving conflict rather than just telling a very specific conflict story. Is that sort of what you're talking about here?
Yeah. When when I ask interview questions, I do have some of the behavioral type questions. So um, I'll ask, for instance, one, tell me a time when you had a conflict with someone. Tell me a time when you had to rely on written communication to get your point across.
Hmm.
Tell me about a time that you had to influence a group to see things your way. Tell me about a time, and these are all behavioral. I mean,
You're
I'm
asking
not,
stories. You're asking for stories. You're
I'm
saying, tell
asking,
me about a time. That's
yes,
awesome.
yeah, I'm literally just asking for stories. And then the last question that I ask after they ask me their questions, I go, do you have any questions for me before I ask my last question? And they go through their questions. The last question that I'll ask is, what is your proudest um, career accomplishment? And if they come up with something, that is that is the bonus. But if they can't, that's like, whoa, you've had this a wonderful career and you can't think of one thing that you're proud of, and it's like that is sometimes a deal breaker too. I'm not saying that I weigh the entire interview on that,
Sure.
but it's like if you can sell yourself, you should be able to pick one accomplishment. So always have those kind of like on the side, or in the in the wings to pull out. These are the things that I did really well, and these are the things, like you said, what are some of your weaknesses that you can also speak to.
That's awesome. And so thinking back through your own career, where do you feel like do you have any examples of where you feel like you struggled a little bit in I mean, now you're so far along,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably got all this stuff mastered, right? But early on, how did you sort of build these skills? How did you whether naturally or through trial and error, how did you sort of learn these techniques over time?
Um, when it when it I would say my earliest challenge when it comes to a team, I joined a team that the manager and the employee were coworkers before, so they had a relationship professionally for many years, for 5 years before I was the third wheel. Essentially, I was the
Mhm.
third person to join on a team of two. When I came on, there was this, I would say, physical distance. They had their desk on one side of the floor, and my desk, because there was no room around them, was literally on the other side of the floor. So I was not only separated by interaction and by physical distance. And I think the only way I could get around that was to raise my voice, to make it not an issue, but to just draw attention to it. During one-to-ones, mention, hey, is there a possibility that we could sit together so that we can collaborate? I feel that a team that sits nearby each other can just bounce ideas off each other, ask questions. It makes it for a better cohesiveness within the team. And upon mentioning that, upon opining on it, eventually we did move to sit together because they understood the benefit of it. But if I hadn't said anything, if I hadn't advocated for myself, I don't think I would have gotten beyond that. So the lessons learned from that is, if you do have an issue, if there's something that you're finding as far as a challenge at work, is simply just to talk about it,
Mhm.
to opine about it, and to draw attention to it. Because 9 times out of 10, they just don't realize that it's an issue because it's something that you find that it's not working for you. And from that point on, I don't try to be the squeaky wheel, but I try to at least make it known, hey, this is a problem. Is there something we could do to address it? And if the answer is no, then I move on. It's not that it's a deal breaker, or I'm going to quit because of it. But yeah, if it's a situation that it can be addressed internally, great. But if it's something that is beyond that, much higher than yes, then you do have other issues, and there are other means to go about that, fixing it, HR, etc.
Yeah, it's focusing on what you can control and keeping your expectations realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really great approach there. And as you're continuing to develop in your career and see where all these different pieces are leading, what are you already strategizing for years down the line? Like what wheels are turning in your head about things you might need to develop or skills you might need to continue to perfect in order to get where you want to be down the road, whether that's a clear destination or a little bit one of exploration?
I'll be honest with you, Martin. Every job that I've ever acquired, oops,
Oh, I lost your video.
Nope, my camera, my webcam just got unplugged. So can you still hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So if you can hear me fine, I'll just continue talking. What I find is
plug it back in. That's perfectly fine.
All right. To go back in, what I was saying about my career, the important part about whenever I join an organization is to make sure that I put my career path. What is it that I want to do going forward? How do I want to progress from my current role? So I put together a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year plan, and I've had great success allowing using these type of tools. What I did currently in my role is in about 1 to 2 years time, I'd like to acquire a senior manager role and have direct reports. Within that 2-year period of starting my current role, I was able to acquire that. I think it's I'm trying to think of the word. My career advancement. Sorry, I draw a blank there. So I was able to get the promotion. That's the word I was looking for. And with the promotion, I do have a team now that reports to me. My 5-year plan at my current employer is to start in the executive arena, to not only get the vice president, but a senior VP role. And I did take a class last year for the organization called ASE. ASE is oh, I think we got the camera back.
Getting you back here.
Thank you. It was taking a minute to reset. So ASE is the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement. And they offered a class, which is a leadership academy program. And the focus of that is to learn what is it a leader does? How do they think? How do they communicate? And how do they build rapport with their direct reports, their folks, etc. At that moment, I wasn't a leader yet within the organization, but I wanted to learn the skills needed for that. So this was great timing when it came to learning those skills. How you communicate, how you empathize, how you portray your mission, your vision, is very different when you're within the ranks, when you're an actual doer, not an owner of processes. So my career goal is to now step into the next level of not only being a manager, but being a senior VP at the organization. Whether that's feasible or not, my goal has been set, and I'm communicating that to my manager during my one-to-ones and during my mid-year review and year-end review, so he is aware that these are the goals that I want to do, and anything he can do to help me move along or progress to the next level is within his plan. So I feel that if you set your career path and you write it down as a plan, the steps that you need in order to achieve those, you can tick them off and say, attend class, learn these skills, become a board member of this organization, learn to coach or mentor. These are all pieces that you can do to learn more skills to become a senior leader. And as I've been going through this, past year, these type of roles do open up, and that's when you have to learn to jump at these opportunities and to take advantage of them. I can't explain it any other way. If there's a list of things you need to do, if I don't write them down, they don't get accomplished.
Right.
So that's just me personally. I feel that by writing them down, you're almost, in a sense, enabling them and keeping it front and center so that it's constantly in your focus, in your mind.
Yeah, you're kind of project managing your career backwards, right? You're choosing the end point and lining up the steps to get there. I love it. Um, and that part there where you're communicating up, you're managing up, as they say, right? Um, One of the things that I hear all the time from job seekers and folks trying to build their career is that they wish they could just be blunt. Why can't I just tell them I need a paycheck? Why can't I just tell them that I need a job? Like, why do I have to put on almost a dog and pony show in a way to get someone to advocate for me and things like that? And I think the same thing exists in trying to get promoted and things like that, where you see some folks go to their boss and they're just like, well, it's been a year. Do I get my promotion? And the boss is like, are you going to show me your work? Are you going to lay out your plans? Like, it needs to be sort of a symbiotic thing. And I'm kind of curious what strategies or what skills you've put into play to sort of have that conversation in a way that advocates for you, that doesn't put you to the side and put the company first, because that's another thing that happens is folks will put their own needs to the side in order to work on say yes to too many projects or things like that. So how do you advocate for yourself while also putting it into the context of what's good for the business? What's been your approach there?
So one of the I'd say lessons learned through my career is to always keep a log of any accomplishments that you have. There are many months, weeks that go by that a small accomplishment, a small step, a small deliverable happens. The major ones are the ones that you remember. Those are the ones you're like, yeah, I remember I did this project and we went live on this date. But that's like within the year. After 5 years, that stuff is gone. You don't remember what you did 5 years ago. So when you're in the job, it's not really a raid log. It's more like just a remembrance log of these are the things I worked on, and these are the dates that they got accomplished, and these are the things that I did. So I guess you call it a journal.
Yeah.
And then during your one-to-ones or your mid-year review or year-end review, that's the discussion that you have, because you can have a list in your this is what I did for the year and list them out. And they'll have forgotten literally 90% of them, because that's not what happened last month. This is what happened in January. Now we're in December. What did I do in January? If you hadn't written it down, if I hadn't taken the time to accurately describe what was it that was accomplished, whom benefited, and what was the next steps if it didn't go through, that would never have been shared or put in front of it. And I think that's helped to get some of those reviews that were better than expected. I know that no one can toot your horn better than yourself. It's great that you find a boss or someone who has accolades for you and will shower you with those accolades, but that's very rare. It's not something that they have other direct reports that they have to keep in mind, let alone just you. So if you help that along and you give them the examples, like, yeah, that's right, he did go above and beyond for this, and oh my gosh, they did finish this ahead of time, and it's just a mere mention. It's not like you're I hate to compare it to this, but the Christmas letter syndrome. Whenever you get a Christmas letter from someone, my child was a scholar at Harvard and at the age of 3, and my daughter ran 3 marathons. It's like the bragging sound. Yeah. It's not that. It's totally different. This is my professional accomplishments, what I did this year, and it's talking about just what you did. It's not bragging to let people know how great you are. It's a totally different mindset.
Yeah, it's stating the value you brought. It's I did this, which led to that. I did this, which led to that. I want to keep doing that more and at a higher level. How can we make that happen? And that sort of setup, I think, is really important to give context. And I think for anyone who's job seeking too, because that's most of our audience, they have a hard time talking about their past accomplishments. And as you said, like you laid out, you took note of all the things as they happened. I actually remember one of my performance reviews at Discover where I didn't do that, and it did not go well. It's like, oh, right, I should have done that over the last year. And so I think it's really interesting how folks will downplay their professional achievements very often. They'll think that they're being modest, but that modesty actually, if they were to hear themselves outside of their own head, actually it's like almost not negativity, but it's a word similar to that, where they're almost underselling, or what I like to say, like they're couching their accomplishments out of humility or something like that. But the truth is that the person you're talking to has no idea your background, no context here. So if we're being too humble, then it can actually backfire in a way. So I think that's a really great way of sort of tracking as you go, and thinking about how these things play forward. And then how do you sort of, when we do pitch a promotion, or we pitch any sort of like, future with the company, we have to pitch it in a way that it benefits them, not just us, right? You can't say, oh, well, I want a raise because it's been a year, and you got to keep up with inflation. Like, that's a terrible argument, right? And so what are some of the ways that maybe in the past you've gotten onto a project or gotten a promotion by having that conversation in a way that is with the company's best interest in mind?
Yeah. So two things to answer that, Martin. When it comes to the first piece, which I mentioned earlier, the career goals. So if you've already put together a timeline of within 2 years, I'd like to have this role. What are the things I need to do to accomplish that? That's a conversation that you've started already. So hopefully, if you wanted to get the promotion, it's not like I'm asking, hey, boss, can I have this promotion? Where is it? It's like way back when I started to talk to you, I'm looking at, if I get all these things done and I'm able to accomplish them with rigor, with ease, with additional benefit, it shows that I'm goal oriented and I want to achieve this next level. It makes it easier for them to see that I am ready for that. I don't know how to explain it. So I know I may not be making the point I'm trying to put across. So because I've had that career conversation, they know that that's where I want to go. And they know that
expectations. You're setting clear expectations.
Setting those expectations, exactly. So it's almost, to be honest with you, Martin, I don't even have to ask for the promotion or for the next role. I'm telling them that I want it ahead of time. I'm telling them I'm looking for the senior role, not because it's a promotion, not because it is a better paycheck. I want it because of the responsibilities. And that's how I put it across. It's like, I would like to further my career because that's how I want to progress. But what comes with that progression? Financials and, etc.
I love how you put that. I want this for the responsibilities. And that is a very great way to, I just love how you put it there, because like a lot of times I'll say, why do you want to work in this role? Well, I want the paycheck. Well, you get a paycheck anywhere. You get a paycheck at Target, you get a paycheck, driving Uber. Why this paycheck, right? And I think that answer of like, well, these responsibilities are skills I'm developing. These responsibilities are problems I like to solve. I think a lot of times we have a hard time, and what you're calling out of like writing things down, being specific, knowing exactly what you're trying to accomplish on a skills level, on a goal level, on a career level, and being able to look at it objectively, I think is huge, because it gets you out of that sort of, and I think it's probably like anxiety and fear in a lot of ways of like, well, if I put it down and then I don't achieve it, I'm a failure. Like that sort of mindset that people can get into, and that negative feedback loop that it can put you in of never being specific. So then you never actually chase anything. So then you don't achieve it. And that kind of cycles a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Agreed.
so, go ahead.
There was another part to that. So on top of the career, the path, the discussion earlier, I make sure that when I'm looking for the role, that I'm also looking at where within the organization I could land, or I could apply the skills if I do want the promotion, where I'm looking to go. So it's not only the conversation with my boss, but then it's starting to partner with that area that I'm looking to go to. So they won't know my value. They won't know who I am when I apply for that if I've never talked to them, if I've never interacted with them. So finding out ways that either I can, speak with their manager. I could, and this is not like the cold call type speak with them. It's like, I'm in a meeting. I hear that we're going to, this department. Oh, that's the department I'm looking for, my next role. They have a few positions open there that I'm looking to move to. How can I learn more about that group? How can I partner more with that team? Perhaps, join the meetings, join the conversation that they have around a specific project, even though I'm not directly involved with it. Having, that connection where they're like, oh yeah, that's Carlos. He joined our meetings, a week ago as the manager for this team. He's great, that type of stuff. It's not only the inner conversation, but it's the outer conversation too, the outer relationships, getting to know that group.
I love what you're saying here, because this really doubles down on a point that we talk about a lot in everything at Career Therapy, which is networking doesn't stop once you get a job. And one of the things I think you're amazing at, and one of the reasons I'm so excited that you wanted to be on the show and talk about this stuff, is building those relationships while you're at the office, building those relationships outside of the office, and so on and so forth. And the fact that you and I got together, like a month and a half, 2 months ago and played pool, was that pre-quarantine, post-quarantine?
That's pre-quarantine.
That was pre-quarantine already?
The month of, yeah.
That feels like it was yesterday, but that was oh my God. But we just got together and we played pool at your office. And that kind of stuff, I think, a lot of times people won't reach out until they need something. And that's why maybe they feel a little bit hesitant to network when it comes time to truly rubber to the road. When really what you're talking about is no, make salsa with people, have a good time. And someone even called it out in the comments here that it just seems like a great time at work and that it's a genuine thing. And if there's anything that I could say about you, it's that you're genuine. And so thank you so much. We are right at time here for joining the show. I do want to end with one last question, because you brought it up earlier. Carlos, what is your proudest career achievement?
My proudest career achievement is having a 4-year project that I joined in on the second year. And during that second year, the advancement of what we learned got us to a point where we were able to finish that project in 2.5 years. I was supposed to be on there for 3 years, but I did my job and we were able to accomplish that project within a year and a half of me joining. That's when I got the opportunity to travel to China, to Japan. Other folks from the team went to India, to Malta in EMEA, and Belgium. I went to Fort Lauderdale and trained all the South America and Central and South America partners. It was the advancement of a learning superseded anything as far as a benefit. Not only the money saved, but the fact that we took a month-long process per facility. So 40 facilities converted from paper to digital, manufacturing facilities, and the process to convert one took 30 days. We got it down to a week.
Wow.
So it's that shrinking of time needed to convert was the biggest, win. So when we were at a facility doing 3 months of work, we got it down to a month, we got it down to 15 days, and then we got it down to a week. So it's that's how we progress over a period of 2-year period. And so we were able to finish it in half a year. So a 4-year project in 2.5 years. That's I accomplished it under budget, under time, everything, and learned a ton and got to travel. That to me was awesome. So
that's incredible. Damn.
Yeah.
Bravo, sir. And any last thoughts you want to share before we wrap today?
Yeah, when it comes to networking, make it about them. When you're meeting with someone for lunch, for coffee, just talk about lunch and coffee. Don't even mention the career. Don't even mention that you're out of a job. That to me should be secondary, because the minute you start that conversation, it's the boomerang effect, where you send a text message, hey, I heard that you attended this seminar. Tell me more about that. And then that's where the conversation career-wise can develop. But the initial meeting should just be, how's it going? How are you doing? Tell me about you. And connect that way, because that to me is the important part, is the connection. And then the career talk can be later. So if you immediately call up an old friend from 10 years ago and say, do you have a job? That doesn't go well. So make it about them when you meet.
I love it. Thanks for joining us on the live stream today, Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Martin.
Absolutely. Anytime. Seriously. Anytime you have an idea that you want to share, I'm happy to have you back. So enjoy the rest of your day. I hope this was valuable to everyone who's out there on the job hunt. And I know we didn't quite get to quarantine stuff, so maybe that'll be saved for another time. But enjoy, and I will chat with you soon, my friend.
See you later, Martin. Take care. Bye.